Hello, New Zealand. We are back. Hello, Simon O'Connor. How are you?
I am doing spectacularly well. And look, we said it last week, Bob, but you just know you've made it with media when you now not only have a solid ground cup, but a political playback mug.
Oh,
as
yes.
well.
That's true. I must just
You've
take a drink.
got yours. Good.
Cheers.
Good, yes.
Cheers.
Slosher.
Okay, look, we've got a lot to cover, so stop distracting me. The first thing we're going to do is just put up the poll question. The poll question is, do you feel safer? Mark Mitchell became the Minister of Police a year ago. He said he was going to make us all feel safer. And we want to know, is it any safer to go around the street? Actually, I did notice just as we came to air, Simon, that there's a whole lot of chatter around some horrific stabbing at a shopping centre in Auckland.
Yeah, at Westfield and Newmarket.
Yeah, so are we feeling safer? So that is the question. Anyway, if you come to our Facebook page, Family First Facebook page, we will get your comment direct. And if you go to YouTube, we'll get your comment direct. But you're welcome to watch on LinkedIn, X, or our personal Facebook pages. But just if you want us to see what you're saying, then do it on our Family First Facebook page or YouTube. So question is, do you feel safer? Mark Mitchell says we should feel safer, so we are keen to know whether you are. But anyway, let's get straight into the topics. There's a lot to cover, and obviously the whole Hikoi, the haka, the heat around the Treaty Principles Bill is something that we do want to touch on. Simon, obviously it was an incredible turnout at Parliament, one of the biggest. Actually, would you say it's one of the biggest you've seen?
No.
There was a picnic at Parliament. Yeah, I mean it was a massive crowd. So I mean that's pretty good. Although I was interested in this coverage because there were some interesting characters in the background there. Of course, that's illegal now to actually wear those. Here's another one there. So it was kind of interesting just to watch what was going on. But what was your overall impression? I mean, credit to the organisers. They got a crowd.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's many ways to dissect this, but I think it shows a healthy side of our democracy, actually, Bob, that whether it was 40,000, 50,000 or more, it doesn't really matter. It's that actually huge numbers of New Zealanders turned out, and they did so peacefully. It was a remarkably peaceful, well-behaved protest, and they clearly got their message across, which is really, really good.
Okay, there's a number of sort of angles I want to touch on and get your response to, Simon. The first is that it seems like through this whole debate, the media have only really spoken to one side of the debate. They go to lots of people, but in terms of the other side, there's only one person they talk to, and it's David Seymour. And the thing I really didn't like, I just want to show you a clip from the news item because I really thought it was kind of gutted journalism, the way they did it. They were basically trying to get the worst out of the people they are interviewing. Have a watch.
If anyone had any doubts about the depth of feeling on this issue, they only need look at the thousands upon thousands that have turned out in Wellington today.
Some with choice words for the author of the Treaty Principles Bill, David Seymour.
Well, you Seymour, you Luxon, from my heart.
Yeah, shame on your undies.
Others saving their breath.
If you had David Seymour out here on the street, what would you say to him?
Walk past him. Yeah, not much.
I'll give him a few choice words. I'm not that type of person.
Yeah, going around asking everybody at a protest what they think of the key opponent. I just thought it was tacky, but not surprising.
Yeah, look, I'd agree. It's playing the man, not the ball. You'd think it would be more responsible journalism to go, well, why are you here protesting today? What is it that's wrong with the bill? What would you do differently? That would be journalism. But again, it's just, I think, indicative, Bob, of the media's bias. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other bit of bias that I thought was pretty atrocious is the fact that despite David Seymour wanting to front up to the crowd, he wasn't allowed. Now, the coverage from the New Zealand Herald said that as the crowd chanted, Seymour walked back into the beehive. And the second story was Seymour walks out, waves to protesters, and then leaves. That was a New Zealand Herald, almost as though, he really was shunning them, and he just, retreated as the crowd chanted, but the facts were actually very different.
As the Hikoi began, One News was with the ACT Party caucus and asked David Seymour if he would front protesters.
I've actually spoken, for example, to Rawiri Waititi and said, would you give me that chance? And he said, I wouldn't advise it. It's your choice, but I wouldn't advise it.
I see him on the news today saying that Rawiri Waititi told him not to come. You goddamn right I told you not to come. He said he wanted to have a say. You had your say on Thursday.
But as Rawiri Waititi spoke, the ACT leader appeared, even offering a nervous wave to the crowd.
A nervous wave.
They didn't want...
Yeah, they didn't want him. A nervous wave. I mean, it's all fairly low. It really bugs me because, look, whatever side of the debate you're on in this, I just sort of feel it's derogatory all in one direction.
Yeah, well, there's 2 points to make, if I might. And the first is to echo exactly what you've just said. It's all in one direction. It's the reporting is skewing things. But the other is it's the hypocritical element, actually, that's coming particularly from the Māori Party. They talk about this being a treaty. They talk about this as partnership, and yet they only want to hear their voice. So there's Rawiri yelling, screaming, and some of the other stuff that they've been doing and saying on social media, absolutely appalling. But how they in their minds reconcile talking, as I say, about treaty and partnership and dialogue and engagement, which is by nature of a treaty, and yet refusing to engage with, in this case, a Minister of the Crown. Again, you don't have to agree with Seymour on this or anything, but he's allowed to speak, but they only want to hear their voices.
So if a protest turned up that was opposing your position on something, would you expect to get a speaking slot in front of that crowd? I mean, what's the general expectation here?
It's a really good question. It's a little bit unfortunate, like how long's a piece of string, because it's not unusual. It's not unusual to turn up to events. It's probably more when you're in government and you turn up to a protest on, let's say, drug buying or something else that legitimate drug buying, I better say for viewers. It's not unusual for a government MP, for example, MPs to turn up and to listen or to briefly speak. The more contentious it gets, it is a bit unusual. So let's be clear, David Seymour is trying to play a little bit of the martyr's role here. It would be very unusual. It'd be like him turning up to March for Life and telling us why he likes to abort babies and, get rid of grandma. It would be very unusual.
Yeah, and we wouldn't expect him to be there. So I guess in fairness, Rawiri Waititi is quite right to say, well, we don't want you to speak here. I just think they should be honest and say that that's the case. The media coverage gave the perception, as I said, the New Zealand Herald are making out as though, well, it's because he was booed by the protesters. In fact, I don't think the protesters even saw him there because he's right over under that alcove as you come out of the public parliament area. So nobody would have seen him.
I think arguably, Bob, both sides, doesn't matter if it's the Māori Party or David Seymour and the ACT Party, both are positioning and both are using the protest or the Hikoi for their own purposes. So they're sort of doing the same thing. In fact, I wrote about this months and months ago, well before we knew about the Hikoi. ACT and the Māori Party are acting in the same way, just on different perspectives. So they're all just trying to grab headlines. And Seymour had his camera crew there and behind him showing how he walked out, and it's all positioning.
Okay, well, one of the contentions was that Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister, did not front the crowd. Now, I'm not sure whether he would have been welcomed, and I don't think he wanted to be there, but TVNZ thought he should have been there, and we're getting stuck into him. Have a listen to this interviewing.
So it was a significant day. Why didn't you go out and greet the crowd?
Yeah, well, look, we basically, the real reason was that, a lot of the organisers were Te Pāti Māori. They have an opportunity to interrogate me in the House each and every week. We did send a delegation of National Party MPs out to represent us in our position, which was really good. And importantly, I get to talk to iwi leaders, up and down the country continuously, and in private and in public, and some of the sessions and meetings that we have as well. So, from my point of view, the message is really clear to the general Hikoi, which was that, we're not supporting the bill and it won't become law. And there's good reason for why we're not supporting it, which is that it's overly simplistic. You don't go negate 184 years of debate and discussion with the stroke of a pen. I think our approach is better, which is you pick it up issue by issue. And importantly, we're here to make sure that we improve outcomes for Māori and non-Māori. And that means focusing on the economy, law and order, health and education. And frankly, this doesn't help us do that.
Okay, so that's his answer, and I think it's probably a fair answer. He's answered everything, but Jenny May ain't given up.
I just want to bring you back to the question about why you didn't actually greet the thousands that turned up at Parliament yesterday. You are the leader of this country. Those people that turned up yesterday, did they not deserve your attention?
What a joke.
Do I need to ask a question,
joke.
Simon?
Oh, well, I mean, listeners will click to it. I mean, look, first and foremost, could he have gone out? Of course he could have. But there's no expectation that the Prime Minister should turn up to all and every protest, and nor does the size of it actually make a difference. But, you know, I'm thinking of the COVID protest and the way the media dealt with that. There was none of that grilling of Jacinda Ardern and others demanding to know why they would not go out. In fact, the media celebrated the fact that they did not go out. So again, you know, I would suggest, you know, we don't have to get hung up on whether the Hikoi is good or bad, blah, blah, blah. It's more the bias, again, in the mainstream media, and just look at how they handle different protesters. And to put the little ice in on that, you know, are we going to have, I've forgotten that reporter's name, doesn't really matter.
Jenny May Coffin or?
Yeah, So is she going to be questioning Prime Minister on Monday morning after March for Life? Or why did you not go? You know, there are thousands of New Zealanders out there. Of course she isn't.
Don't be silly, Simon. Now, the interesting thing is that there's still some interesting, you know, debate going on. I mean, this was the most recent polling, which would basically suggest the country is sort of split down the middle. 46% in black there is who supports the bill, 25% oppose it, 29% are still figuring out. And look, to be honest, that 29%, I think, are the group that we should be showing respect to and saying, okay, here's what the issues are. But, you know, they're either being labelled or they're keeping their head low because they're scared of raising concerns. But as you'll see there, National 4-1 in favour, New Zealand First 5-1 in favour. Interestingly, ACT supporters 2-1 in favour. And Labour and Greens are actually split down the middle. It's about 0.9 to 1. So it's just under, just over half of the supporters who have an opinion of those two parties support the bill or oppose the bill. And I was fascinated to see the Māori Party there, bottom right, second from right at the very bottom, but hard for us to see. But actually there are some Māori Party supporters either who don't know whether they support it or don't support it, which I think's kind of very brave. But anyway, it kind of suggests that the jury is still out and there's debate to be had, which I think's a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, we've debated difficult and controversial topics before. It's probably the fundamental problem I have around the current approach to this bill. Is the attempt to shut down any discussion and debate. And the Hikoi organisers, those church leaders who wrote that ridiculous letter and others, their basic premise is, this is too difficult for the ordinary person to comprehend and discuss. Just leave it to us, the elites. And I've got a real problem with that. I think New Zealand can have these discussions and robustly. And in fact, the Hikoi proves it. You know, 40, 50, whatever thousand people turned up, tens of thousands rather, and did so peacefully and got their point across. And yeah, for better or worse, again, depending on one's perspective, more New Zealanders are actually in favour of the bill. The Hikoi was strong, but actually from those polls, a lot of Kiwis are supportive of it. And I think they're allowed to have their say, and they should have their say.
Okay, well, there's already attempts to reduce that say. It's supposed to be 6 months in the Select Committee, but already there are calls for it to be reduced.
With thousands of people gathered here today, those who spoke laid down a challenge, not to David Seymour, but to Christopher Luxon, urging him to shorten the 6-month submission period for the Treaty Principles Bill, which begins today. Will you do that?
That'll ultimately be a decision for the Select Committee from here on through.
So you've been the chair of a Health Select Committee. Who decides whether it's going to be shortened from the 6 months? I mean, that was agreed upon, so can that be changed?
Well, no, actually, the House decides. So when a bill is finished in its reading, the minister sends it to a select committee, and unless basically the House, the whole Parliament has to vote on that. The chair of a select committee, along with the committee members, let's be clear, the chair has no power beyond the title. They're just one of many. They can decide of how they want to structure things. But in this case, actually, Christopher's got, as in Luxon's, got the process wrong. It's the House that decides. But again, if this is as serious and dramatic a topic as people say it is, then why would you want to shorten the process? Arguably you'd want more time.
And is that a majority vote in Parliament as to whether it's shortened? Like, does someone move a motion and say, we want it to be only 1 month of submissions and then we want to shut down this whole debate?
So normally it's quite perfunctory because the 6-month window for bills is the ordinary or usual approach. And so the minister would just say at the end of the first reading, when it's successful, I nominate it to go to the Justice Committee, and it's just given that that's 6 months. If the minister in charge wants to change the length, to say, hey, we only want it to be 3 months, then there's often a debate and certainly a vote. But by nature of being government, you have the votes and it goes forward.
Okay, and I would suspect that this is probably going to get more submissions than even the conversion therapy bill. So look, we're looking at more than 100,000 submissions. Everybody wants to do an oral submission. There's going to be lots of form letters. In fact, I've already seen the form submissions already doing the circuit, and I've been saying to them, don't do form submissions because they'll just lump them together as one, which is very common because I guess as chair of the committee, because you were chair of the committee during the euthanasia debate, weren't you? 30,000 submissions, was that right, or 40,000?
Yeah, it was the biggest. It was the biggest inquiry at that. It was huge.
So how do you process that? You got 40,000 submissions. You got maybe 10,000 people who want. Oh no, wouldn't be that many, would it? About 5,000 who want to make oral submissions. How do you wheedle it all down?
So certainly. So I'm just trying to think of how to very succinctly put it. But basically, you do set some basic rules. But certainly when I was chairing health and then foreign affairs, the presumption was that more people should be allowed to write and be heard than not. Right. I certainly have to say in my last years in Parliament, there were more and more moves under the previous government to try and limit, to create more and more rules. But look, basically, you're right. If anyone's just sending literally a form letter and there's no extra details, you just lump it all together as one submission, and you don't invite anyone to come and chat. Certainly when I was in charge, if someone had appended a note to any submission that was, a form, that still counts. And then when it comes to the oral submission, because that's what takes time, Bob, what committees will often do is break into subcommittees. So instead of, and you probably would have had this yourself as I have, you won't be turning up in front of 9 or 7 MPs. You might, with euthanasia, at times there's only 2 of us in multiple committees so that we could just get through. Because it's, for me personally, everyone has the right to be heard and the Parliament has to respond. But I am just signalling here today there is some worrying signs, not just around this bill, but others where the select committees are trying to reduce the ability of New Zealanders to have their say.
Okay, and I asked this for a reason. Were people allowed to swear in your select committee hearings? Because they've already put out a warning that foul language will not be accepted. And I sort of thought, well, isn't that just a given in terms of respect when you're making a submission? But maybe not.
Very rarely did anyone in an oral submission swear. In terms of what gets sent into committees, it can be varied. 99.9% of what comes in is perfectly fine. The main issues are, you can get some people who are very sweary, often sometimes natural justice issues. They might actually put accusations in about someone or a family member, but that's where the clerks of the committee kick in. And so look, someone who has an expletive-laden submission, the committee would probably dismiss it to go, we're not going to take that.
A red flag already. Now, the media suddenly started feeling sorry for politicians and said that, some politicians just weren't coping with it all. I want to come back and ask you whether that would be the case. But they failed to recognise that they're the ones who have created the heat on a lot of this.
And the enormous impact of this debate, Mike, is starting to take a toll on politicians.
Absolutely, Simon. Look, I think there's no mistaking it. This debate is weighing heavy on all politicians here at Parliament, but particularly so for those right in the thick of it. Now, Hana Rāwhiti Maipi Clark, we saw some real emotion from her today. She was almost in tears, and that's because while she has gone global in the last week after we saw her ripping the Treaty Principles Bill in half during that first reading, she has also copped a lot of criticism from a number of people on doing so, and she is still the youngest MP here at Parliament. She is still going up against some fiery debate with a number of older male MPs.
Older male MPs. Yep, that's you, Simon.
Well, if you can't take the heat, get out of the engine room. And look, let's be really blunt about this. Apart from, again, the identity politics lens which this report is putting over things, it's a classic abuser's profile, isn't it? So they are more than happy to yell and scream and threaten, but when there's any pushback on them, now I'm the victim and I'm upset and I'm emotional. As I say, can't stand the heat, get out of the engine room.
This is fun, Simon, because all I'm doing is just, putting red rag to a bull in front of you and getting your reaction. This is hilarious. Everybody's really enjoying it. Huge crowd, lots of comments coming through. The one thing I really did want to understand is that this is not the first time that we have gotten down this road in Parliament. A lot of people may have forgotten. Back in 2005, 2006, there were two bills that were put forward to get rid of the principles, not to refine them like Seymour wants, but actually to get rid of them, both from Winston Peters. And in fact, National and Labor, National supported both, Labor supported one of them. And so the media have rushed off to ex-National, because they really want to pin the government, right? So they've rushed off to ex-National people. So they've gone to Chris Finlayson, who says that it's going to greatly damage National's relationship with Māori. The only problem is that back in 2006, he said that he supported the Treaty of Waitangi deletion bill and said that there was much to be done on it. And then you've got Tau Henare, who's really going nuts at his ex-colleagues. You were in Parliament when Tau Henare was there, I don't think. Were you? No, lucky.
No.
And so he's going, ballistic about them. But then next minute, second reading, he says, I congratulate members who sent the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi deletion bill to the Justice and Electoral Committee. And here's the coalition agreement between New Zealand First and Labor in 2006 to support a New Zealand First bill relating to treaty principles going to a select committee for consideration. Is this pot kettle black for Labor MPs?
Sort of. I mean, in the way that Labor's certainly handling it at the moment, accusing National of selling out through a coalition agreement, you're dead right to point out that Labor signed a coalition agreement with New Zealand First, which allowed the Treaty Principles Bill, or whatever it called back then in 2006, to be voted on. So, yeah, they are pot calling the kettle black in that regard. The overall dynamic, it's not unusual, though. I mean, consistency and politicians don't often sit in the same sentence. Someone like Tau Henare, look, in one way, I really like him. He calls a spade, but he's a bit of a mercenary. He's been across multiple political parties and affiliations. And someone like Chris Finlayson, well, I think often on that centre-right, they know they can get headlines and relevance by supporting the media view. And so it's very easy these days. And you saw Jenny Shipley as well coming out. They get headlined by supporting this sort of thing. If they were to stand by their principles, as articulated back in 2005, 2006, they would get no coverage.
Yeah. Okay, there has been some coverage about the fact that behaviour in Parliament, lots going on about behaviour in Parliament, and so there's discussion about whether the haka in Parliament wasn't misbehaving, that it actually should be allowed now. I just want to show you this because I want to make an interesting point about this.
National, ACT and New Zealand First want tougher rules in Parliament and harsher penalties for those who break them.
What we saw on Thursday was unacceptable, and we need to make sure that we can have debates on difficult subjects without people threatening other members inside of Parliament.
Getting out of your seat, obstructing people, preventing a vote from taking place.
David Seymour's a sukibaba, and we're seeing a lot of sukibaba behaviour in this House.
Te Pāti Māori unapologetic.
They complain, they play victim to a lot of things, and in actual fact, they have inflicted a lot of harm.
I don't think it's fair to say that the House hates haka, but when haka overwhelms voting, then I think haka should play second fiddle.
In the 11 years I've been in Parliament, this place has changed, and I think that the rules need to consider just that changing face of our country.
Okay, so there's this mention about sukibaba, and interesting Pene Henare, because he was actually one that got up and did the haka from Labour with the Te Pāti Māori MPs. But I just want to give another example of sukibaba, and I would be really interested to know what Te Pāti Māori thought of this one.
Our men were saying, yes, it's all right. You know, she's a Prime Minister. She can do anything. And I said to them, I'm not going to allow this to happen. How dare you think that a Pākehā woman can speak before Māori? So I turned to Helen and I said to her, you sit down. Dover Samuels was the one that was encouraging her to stand. So I walked up to her and I said, I'm asking you to sit down. You will not speak before Māori women. You will not. So that's when she began to cry. And oh my gosh, I thought, oh, this is lovely. This will make lovely news.
So it seems like there's a protocol in certain places, but not in others. And that was a key point we were making, is that there is protocol. It's there for a reason. We should respect it. And it seems like one side didn't want to respect it. And, you know, at the moment, I don't know if you heard the latest news, is that the Minister of Education, Erica Stanford, has just had to apologise in the House for swearing at the opposition Minister of Education, Jan Tinetti. So there is a standard in the House. So I'm not quite sure why we shouldn't maintain that standard. What's going on here?
Oh, look, it's the usual one-sided stuff, and it's one of the reasons why, amongst other things, there's tension around the treaty, because some in the likes of Māoridom, particularly when it comes to protocol and tikanga, it only goes in one direction. As I wrote, I think, last week, you imagine turning up at a marae and, you know, as they're doing the karanga or the welcome, start screaming, yelling, throwing white camellias, because just like Te Whai, Harawira, they're noted, women aren't allowed to speak on the marae. There's an interesting thing for our feminists and liberals. Imagine what would happen. You would rightly, stress that word rightly, be kicked out. We have protocols for a reason. And you know what? We don't want to go back to basically a free-for-all. And the whole Westminster system is built in such a way to try and preserve dignity in conversation. That's why you don't walk out of your seat and approach another MP. It's why you don't swear at them. It may look archaic to a lot of people, Bob, but it's trying to maintain order. And look, maybe the Maori Party are happy to break out into haka every 5 seconds, every time they're offended, which probably means every second. But you just imagine if I had burst out, I don't know, in some Irish or Latin blast at them, I don't know what would be the equivalent.
Please no.
Exactly, but they'd be the first to be crying how inappropriate it is. I mean, it's just, you know, go and wear your shoes on a marae, see how they feel.
Okay, and I think it was the Green MP, what's the American one that got in trouble because she went over and... Julianne Genter rushed over and stood in the face and shouted in the ear of Matt Ducey. And, you know, people didn't accept that, and I don't think anybody was arguing that that wasn't appropriate type of behaviour. Okay, just a couple of sort of minor ones. Just did want to ask you about interesting coverage of the Hikoi versus the coverage of the Brian Tamaki event, the Hikoi on the motorway, and even the police response. What was your thoughts there?
Oh, just completely and utterly biased. I mean, it's just why trust in mainstream media is, you know, gone out the window. You just can't trust them, Bob. So fawning headlines about the Hikoi, and the fact the Hikoi blocked both sides of State Highway 1, I think, near Levin. Brian Tamaki basically does the same. He blocks part of Auckland's motorway. But the headlines are he's reckless, it's dangerous. Look, personally, I think they're both driving people mad. But the different treatment just shows you that the contemptible bias that's operating in mainstream media. Yeah.
Okay, now I want to get down to the really serious, deep issue that I need to ask you about, Simon. This is very, very important, and look, I need a really good answer on this. Every time political leaders are interviewed on TV, we see this. They have the noddies behind them standing there looking like stunned mullets. I'm not even sure what they're thinking. I don't think they know where to look. And I thought, well, is this just Chris Hipkins? So I did a bit of research and I found no. It happens with all of them. I mean, the Greens, they get the noddies, even the illegal ones they've just sanctioned. So they agree. And then I thought, well, is it? No, he's got them as well. And even he's got them. So could you just explain to the rest of us normal people, why do politicians feel that they have to have support crews behind them?
Firstly, I just say I used to hate it. And I refused where I could to be the person standing behind any party leader, like a nodding Jesus. You know, those little wobbly things you have in the car. But why it's done, I suppose, it's meant to look like it's the same as these big rallies that they have people behind. It's meant to show support. And for the MPs, for them, they want to show their proximity to the leader and showing support. So some MPs will literally jostle to try and get into the nodding seal position. But it's trying to show that the leader's supported and in agreement. But you're also right. Half the time you don't know where to look. As I say, I hated it. I avoided it at all costs. It had to happen a few times, but yeah, I think it's stupid. I mean, there's the perfect one.
Yeah, the noddy. It's like the dashboard. I did do a little bit of research though, and I found out that you're a little insecure as well, because not only did you had actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with labelling boxes, so you're not out of jail on this particular one. So you needed your support crew as well.
That's right. When you're doing the questions, I remember that because a ruling came out soon afterwards that you were not. Were not to have the boxes. Labor started it, we responded, and rightly the Speaker said, that's enough. Again, that's just another part, very quickly, Bob, of the decorum in the rules, to say it's just a clear desk policy. Because the moment you say, it's okay to have boxes, then all of a sudden are they bigger boxes, little boxes, flashing lights that say vote Labor? I mean, where does it end?
Yeah. Now, I do just want to, Amanda has asked this question, do they know who organised the protest? And she's followed it up with, isn't Tau Henere's daughter married to the Te Pāti Māori party leader, and she organised the Hikoi along with the Māori Party MP? There is some interesting organisation. It's like a registered company behind the Hikoi, and there was even some government support from groups like Waiparaira Trust who are using their vans, etc. So there's some interesting stuff going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%. Let's not go down that rabbit hole for the interest of time, but long and short, the Māori Party, its supporters, the likes, as you say, of the Waiparaira Trust, which is strictly a charity, fully involved. And it looks like the organiser, the Eru Kinga Kapakingi, works for Parliament, which is more likely an indicator then that all his flights and travel, hotels would have been covered by Parliament too. So I think it's important that the questions are asked. But I'd also say it doesn't arguably take away from the protests themselves, but the questions need to be asked because, it's got a hint of the whole Black Lives Matter, to be honest.
Organisation.
The organisation is hoovering up money from well-intentioned people, but lining their own pockets.
Yep. Okay. Now, I noticed that Ken, who's on our social media, running our social media, he's put up this question: do you support the treaty's principal bill? Because he's obviously feeling there's some energy in the comments for that. So we are interested to know where you stand on that. Family First hasn't taken a position on it. We just encourage you to be involved in the debate and exercise free speech and do it politely and succinctly and be part of the select committee process if you want to. Now, let's move on, and our next topic, so we can finally move on. Today,
was there other topics? Wow, God.
Yeah, I think we've got two. We've got the gang patch ban, which is happening today, and last night the media were running around forgetting that actually gangs are responsible for a disproportionate amount of crime in New Zealand and intimidation, and went around finding the nicest people, and he was nice.
The gang patch is something many in Wairoa wouldn't think twice about, but from tomorrow it'll be breaking the law.
Bro, it's a scary thought, to be honest, bro. I can just see it causing a lot of unnecessary drama, a lot of friction.
Adamant his chapter won't be ditching their patches.
I'm from Wairoa. This is where I'm from. No man has the right to tell me how to dress here in my whenua.
But under the new rules, anyone displaying gang insignia in public will face consequences.
I understand do the crime and do the time. But where there's no victim, there's no crime. There's no victim here. I have huge concerns over whānau, over tamariki losing their fathers, bro. Over their choice of what they've worn, bro. It's just going to create a lot of dysfunction, which there's already enough of that here in Aotearoa.
So it seems like there's been no real debate in the media about the justification or the desire for the gang patch ban, but it seems like people do support the ban.
They do. I mean, I'm sort of torn at one level between sort of the practical and the philosophical, if you will. And what I mean by that, practically, the mongrel mob, Black Power, Killer Bees, I think there's 32 of them that are designated.
Yep.
These are criminal gangs, okay? I mean, you know this. This is not a kindergarten chapter.
No.
These are criminal gangs. Drugs, prostitution, abuse. I mean, it's just, we could go on. So the nature of their patches are very much a sign that they've done probably a lot of bad things, not just a bad thing, and it is intimidatory to people, and that's part of what they want to project. So practically speaking, this makes a lot of sense. I think it'll be welcomed by most New Zealanders, but philosophically, and we've touched on this before, I am a little bit more nervous because actually that guy speaking did touch on a little bit of truth, which is, why is this criminalised? Like, what he's wearing is criminalised. And I know it's a slippery slope argument, but the government now has introduced a law which can, if they wanted, to expand, be it this government or well into the future, that says, we've decided these images of these groups are no longer. And we talked about it about 2 weeks ago, Bob. Remember the whole Nazi symbols that all of a sudden David Seymour did not want to ban? And you go, well, hold on, how is that consistent? So that's the philosophical problem we're running into. Okay,
let's move on. And you're going to have to explain this one because you've sort of got a bit more knowledge on it. But basically, a anti-abortion protester was being taken to court. Credit to the Free Speech Union who got him behind him, and the charges were dropped. What was this all about?
So really briefly, his name's Paul Evans. If you live in Wellington, you'll know him well. He stands at the Parliament end of Lambton Quay. Long and short, he has a sign that says, I'll give you $100 if you can tell me that slavery is worse than killing the unborn child, or something like that. Someone engaged him, because that's part of the debate, and was arguing, hey, the world's overpopulated already, so the whole climate change, overpopulation angle. And so Paul did the rhetorical flourish that most people would do and say, well, why is it that you want to kill the unborn child? Why don't you just kill yourself? So turns out that someone listening to this, so not the person in the debate, was offended and reported Paul to the police, and he was arrested for saying the wrong things, basically. So he was arrested for that rhetorical flourish, and he's been
he would have been charged for inciting someone to take their own life. Would that be the charge?
That'll be at least one of them, causing public offence, part of the Summary Offences Act.
Right. Okay, because we don't have hate speech crimes.
No, we don't. Although we've talked about this before, of course. Fortunately, although the police have been having their respond and record, they are been looking at these non-crime hate speech stuff, which is, again, ridiculous. So that's the long and the short, but he's been punished by the process. He got let off, the Free Speech Unions helped out, They've dropped the charges, but they should never have been there in the first place, Bob. He's been punished by the process, time and money to be involved with this. For speaking from my perspective, that's a perfectly logical, rational debating point. And here's the man being arrested by the police. Nuts.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just before I forget, just before we go on to, I think it's our final topic, I just want to remind people that we do actually have a Straight Talk special on Monday night. We are going to be talking about the Treaty Principles Bill and how you should respond, a family approach. We've got a great lineup. We've got Professor Paul Moon, Brad Harmey, Alfred Nardo, and Ewan McQueen. So a number of authors there, a number of researchers, historians, and spokespeople in this whole area. And we're going to have a civil discourse about this whole issue and a family approach to this contentious issue that I'm sure families are having lots of discussions around the dinner table. So that's a special on Monday night at 8 o'clock. Right, another story that I just need you to tell me a bit about, and this is that there is $300,000 of government, so taxpayer money, your money and my money, spending revealed on gravy train workshops, and they're about being anti-white. White. What's going on here?
So I think if I recall correctly, this is through the good work of actually the taxpayer union. They are pretty good at ferreting this stuff out. Long and short, I think it was ACC has picked up on some of those American cultural wars and all that DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and literally holding workshops for senior managers in ACC and elsewhere to end their whiteness, which is in itself racist and appalling. But, as this government continues to spend more money and puts us into more debt, you'd think they'd start by cutting stupid, wasteful spending like this.
Okay, yeah, no, incredible. You just want to see Matt Walsh just enter into this. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Matt Walsh from Daily Wire has done a documentary called Am I a Racist? It's worth subscribing to Daily Wire just to watch Am I a Racist? It's the ultimate troll. But he would fit perfectly into perhaps researching this. Now, I have to confess, I did do a bit of research after you alerted me to this, Simon, and I found out that it's run by the Pākehā Project, which is committed to revealing and questioning the algorithms of whiteness that discipline our world. And they talk about that if you want to truly unpick white supremacy, then you've got to develop a new skill set. Supremacy will not be overcome by more supremacy. The logic of whiteness shores up whiteness further. Wow. And then I came across this lovely video clip. They are looking for staff, Simon, so please don't watch because I would hate to get your resignation tomorrow.
Kia ora, I'm Rebecca Sinclair and I'm one of the co-founders of the Pākehā Project Leadership Journey that we deliver in partnership with Leadership New Zealand. In the program, we are inquiring into what is the work that we Pākehā have to do if we're going to move towards an Aotearoa where Te Tiriti o Waitangi is truly honoured. And also what isn't our work to do. It's challenging work, it's incredibly expansive and exciting work, and we're looking for some more leaders to join us on this year's journey. So if you're interested, please check out the Leadership New Zealand website and we'll look forward to hearing from you soon.
Anyway, I thought I might register you, Simon, in the Leadership Journey. There is 4 2.5-day in-person retreats. So that's 2 full weeks of work. 3 6-hour online sessions. So that's 18 hours of indoctrination. But then I looked down at the price and saw 13,500 plus GIST. But then not-for-profit organisations. So I'm not sure if we're still not-for-profit, even though we are not-for-profit, because the Charities Commission doesn't like us. 12,500 plus GIST. Down the bottom there, it says that if there's 2 or more people from the same organisation, you actually get a discount. So, I'm thinking about you enrolling you in that for leadership development. I think you'd look good at this table. That is a table of people who are anti-white. Have we gone bonkers?
Well, we have. Yeah, I mean, look, the people behind this are nuts, but I might suggest that those who choose to attend, let alone pay, are even nuttier. I mean, look, just the very little you shared, it's all wrapped up in Marxist ideology. The language is very much part of that. And by its very nature, it's actually incredibly racist. And, you know, we just got to call these idiots out. And they are idiots, but they're dangerous. Because they are getting a bit of traction. Just having a political playback sip from the mug.
Just having a drink from my cup. Yep. Just for some sanity, I need water. Oh my gosh, it's white.
It's a supremacist cup.
All right, let's finish with a little bit of advertising. Firstly, your Substack. What did you talk about?
So my most recent one's focusing on mainstream media and noting how in both New Zealand and America, what they are reporting and how they are reporting is very much at odds with what the public is thinking. So drawing out some of the lessons from the Hikoi, obviously how America responded to the Trump and Republican win, and also touched on a little bit of that Brian Tamaki versus the Hikoi reporting. Again, that they're pushing themselves to irrelevance. The media, that is, the mainstream media.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. My one was on the New Zealand Herald's editorial where they said that this cricketer, he was took a drugs test and found that he had cocaine in his system on the day immediately following a one-day match. But they said that it didn't affect his performance, even though the world sporting body says that you shouldn't have drugs in your system and that it can. And basically the New Zealand Herald was saying it's none of our business and no, all good, despite the illegality. So I was just calling out the New Zealand Herald for another raving bonkers editorial, but they seem to be doing those more and more. Did you have any final comment to make? I'll just quickly check. There's just a couple of comments here that I will put up. Oh, here we go. Not Beefy Productions says, decriminalise cannabis in New Zealand. Oh, hang on, that's not this one. Not Beefy. Decriminalise cannabis in New Zealand. Not Beefy. It's actually basically been decriminalised. Police are adopting a health approach instead of a legal approach if it's in the public interest. So there we go. Answered it already. Fine Weather says, great show, guys. You're really smart. Obviously can only see
excellent
the left-hand
judge of character there.
Can only see the left-hand side of the screen. Rusty says, don't recall any of the organisers of the mandate protest flying to Wellington. Oh, that's right. That protest was totally grassroots and organic in nature. Flying Kiwi says, I support the bill, but should be changed to democracy principles bill with no reference to the treaty. Well, we disagree with that. Treaty's an important document, founding document. Angron says, lol, I was going to say the Greens are the worst for the nodding idiots in the background. No, it's Simon has won that. Please do not take that award. Kevin says, I support the bill as Tainui. Amanda says, I disagree with banning patches because it's not going to stop there. What's next? It's a bit like free speech. Can't allow one and not the other. At least you know who was responsible for any crimes if they have their patches on. I think there's truth there. And finally, Warren says, the jolly heretic touches on this with eugenics conversation. Shocker, it kind of makes sense from a science, DNA and psychological. Oh, you lost me there, Warren. Sorry, it must be late. I need dinner. Anyway, that's all we've got time for, Simon. Thank you very much. Just a reminder, Straight Talk on Monday, the special on the Treaty's Principle Bill. We've got a outstanding panel who are going to help me understand and figure out a family approach to this deeply contentious issue that's getting a lot of heat, especially in the media and in politics. Simon, thank you. What's for dinner tonight? Are you on cooking?
I am, and because I'm on the panel with you now, I've actually prepared it already. A lovely chicken thighs. I've had a nice little rub. Got them in the panko. We're ready to go.
And do they come with chips, coleslaw and potato salad?
Probably will come with chips, but being Rachel, it'll have to be a very healthy salad.
Okay, that compensates. The salad, the negative calories in the celery counts out the chicken. Well done. Thank you, Simon. Have a good night. And thank you for watching. We will see you again next Thursday at 5 o'clock. Until then, have a great night.